Assalamu alaikum, everyone. This is Muniba Essen on this side. A small introduction from my side. I'm currently a fourth year medical student at Dow University, and I am being assigned to do few past paper sessions with you. So today we'll be starting with biology, O levels, code 5090, and today we'll be solving the paper 2 of winter 2025, and the variant we are solving is 2, 2. Okay. Let's quickly dive into the questions. Okay, so the first question is related to hormones. So hormones are produced by glands in the body, right? They alter the activity of the specific target organs, draw lines to link each gland to a hormone it produces, each hormone to a specific target organ. So basically what you need to do, you have to match the gland with the hormones and their target organ. So the first gland which has been given to you is adrenal. So you know adrenal produces adrenaline, right? So we'll connect the adrenal to the adrenaline. Now what's the target organ? They have already given to you that it's the heart. Second gland that they have given is the ovary. Ovary, you know that it produces progesterone and estrogen. So progesterone will be acting on the uterus. Third gland that they have given is pancreas. You know that pancreas is responsible for producing glucagon and insulin mainly when we talk about hormones. So pancreas produces glucagon, and the glucagon acts on the liver, and it produces gluconeogenesis, right? It increases the glucose levels in your blood. Okay, last gland that they have given is pituitary. Pituitary, what does it produce? It is responsible for producing several hormones, which includes FSH, LH, luteinizing hormone, prolactin, and other many hormones. So pituitary is related to producing FSH, and FSH will be acting on what? It will be acting on obviously ovaries. Okay, so this was the very basic, easy question, very mark gaining question. You can easily gain marks in this. Like, it's a free mark question, basically, I would say. Okay, the next part is that name a chemical bond that is produced in a plant to shoot in a plant shoot to coordinate the shoot's response to the gravity. So basically, they're asking which plant hormone is responsible to coordinate the shoot's response to the gravity. So obviously, it's gonna be auxin. Okay, now let's move on to the next question quickly. So a constant supply of water is essential for the animals and the plants. Figure 2.1 is a diagram showing the average daily water intake and average daily water loss for an adult human. So in figure 2.1, you can see that there is an average daily water intake and average daily water loss. So in the average daily water intake, you can see that 1500 volume is being consumed from the drink, then 750 cm cube from foods, and 250 cm cube from metabolism. So in total, you are consuming around 2500 cm cube of water. Okay, and then you are losing water in different ways, like feces, sweat, evaporation of water from the lungs, and 1500 cm cube in the urine. So they are asking you calculate the percentage of average daily water intake that is lost in the sweat from an adult. So very easy question. So in sweat you are losing up to 200 cm cube, right? And in total, whenever you take out the percentage, you take out the percentage out of total, right? So total water consumption was 2500, right? So we'll just take out the percentage, and it's gonna be 8%. Okay, 200 divided by 2500 multiply by 100, that will give you 8%. Okay. Now let's move on to the next part. The percentage of water lost in the sweat is not always the same. Explain why. So it's a very understandable question, because see, you're sweating, it is not like that you sweat certain amount each day. Your sweating depends on many factors, like what type of activity you are performing, what type of temperature you are residing in, is there any stress or other related factors which affect the sweating, right? So basically the purpose of sweating is to maintain your constant body temperature. It is not like that you will sweat 200 cm cube and lose you will sweat and lose 200 cm cube of water daily, right? It's not like that. It's always like that your body needs to maintain a core temperature inside your body via homeostasis. So that's what we are going to answer here, that the percentage of the water lost in the sweat is not always the same, because it depends on the homeostasis, right? So the first thing is, it depends on the homeostasis. Second thing is that why is homeostasis is needed? Because you need to maintain the body temperature, right? Okay. Next thing is, what else we can write in this answer, that evaporation, basically, what is evaporation? It's the evaporation of the sweat to remove the heat energy. Secondly, what I told you in the beginning, that it depends on the increased activity. If you are performing an exercise, or if you are doing a workout, or if you are doing some strenuous work, or you are climbing the stairs, you will be sweating, because the increased activity increases the temperature in your body, which means more sweat will be produced, right? So increased activity wait a second. Which means increased temperature and increased sweat. Okay, so this was this question. Now let's move on to the next part. A scientist measured the mass of the water taken up and lost by the plant over the 21 hours. Now they're talking about the water lost by the plants. The plant was kept at the constant temperature of 20 degrees Celsius on a windowsill in a laboratory. Readings were taken every 90 minutes. Okay, at 0 hours it was sunrise, and at 15 hours it was sunset, as you can see on the graph as well. The results are shown in figure 2.2. As you can see that as the obviously, when the time is passed from sunrise to sunset, the temperature gradually increases and then it decreases, right? So you can see that it is a very regulating curve, but you can see that after the sunrise, obviously the temperature will rise. So you can see that the transpiration or the water loss by the plant is increasing, right? As you can see this curve. Then it is adulating with the temperature changes, and after sunset, this is the hallmark. Okay, so after sunset the transpiration rate has dropped down, because obviously what has happened, that after the sunset, the temperature has gone down, and obviously then the transpiration will not occur as much as it was occurring during the time of sunrise and during the sunrise and the sunset. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. Now let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the questions. The plants lose water by evaporation from their leaves. State the name of this process. So I've already mentioned earlier that it is transpiration, because the plant is losing water, is not sweating. Obviously, it's what? Transpiration. Okay, explain the shape of the curve for the water loss from the plant over the 21 hours of the experiment. So you have to explain that why the water loss has changed from during the 21 hours. So you can say that and you have to keep in mind that you have to explain, not only describe. Okay, so you will be obviously, in order to explain, you'll also have to describe the graph as well. So you can see that during the light, what we are observing, that there is increased water loss. And why is it so? We also have to explain it, because it's sunrise time and the stomata are open. Because during the daytime, the stomata are open for the purpose of photosynthesis as well. Okay, then you can write, the second point should be that during the daytime, sorry, during the night time, there is decreased water loss because the stomatas have been closed. Now, what else you can write in this answer? This is a very this was the very basic answer, right? But there are few other options that you can write in this answer, which will be which can be termed correct. Okay, so basically, when there will be greater light intensity, what will happen? There will be a faster evaporation rate, right? Or you can mention about that that the leaves must have the higher uh, surface area, so that the water can diffuse more. So you can mention these things as well. But when they talk about the curve, you have to be strictly stick to the curve. So you'll mention that what is happening on the curve and why is it happening, because you know that transpiration can only occur when the stomata are open, and it happens during the daytime. And then after the sunset, when it is dark, the stomata is closed and there is no or decreased water loss. Okay, I hope it makes sense. Okay, let's move on to the next part. Explain why the shape of the curve from the water loss is very similar to the shape of the water uptake. Because see, it's a very general phenomena that even in the human body, that if you lose the greater you lose water, the more you are thirsty, right? The more you sweat, the more you urinate, there is more urge to drink water. Similarly, when the plants loses water, they also need to do the water reuptake. Now in this question, they are asking you that why the shape of the curve for water loss is very similar to the shape of the curve for the water uptake. So you have to provide the reasons for it. So first of all, what happens when the water evaporates or transpires from the leaves? It decreases the water potential of the leaves because the water has been lost. So Water moves up through the xylem vessels because xylem vessels is carrying water, so it will transfer the water from the higher water potential to the lower water potential. So now when the xylem pulls up the water, it creates what? It creates a transpiration pull, or you can say the transpiration stream. So the forces of attraction between water prevents the and in order to prevent the loss of turgidity, and in order to prevent the wilting, there is always a transpiration pull created when the plant transpires or loses water, and the water potential of the leaves decreases. So why is it important? Because in order to get the water back in quantity. Okay, so what we'll be writing in this answer, that water wait a second. So what happens? Water evaporates. Right? Then what happens? It reduces water potential. Then what happens? The water moves up through the xylem vessel. To create a transpiration pull. And we'll also mention that why is it important? In order to prevent wilting of the leaves. Okay, now let's move on to the next part. The scientists repeated the experiment. All conditions were kept the same except the temperature of the lab, which was 10 degrees Celsius lower. On figure 2.2, draw a new curve to show the expected results for the water loss at the lower temperature. So you know the concept that when the temperature is low, the rate of transpiration is also low, right? So the graph will be similar because all of the other conditions have been kept same. However, okay, let me confirm that we have to make the graph for the water loss. Yes. Okay, so this dotted line is your water, this solid line is your water loss. So you will draw the same curve but at the lower rate. So we'll draw this line up till here, then here, then here. Obviously, you will be drawing it with a scale. So this something like this, your graph will look. Okay. So your graph will look something like this because the temperature has been decreased, so the rate of transpiration would be low. Okay, so the next question is Azolla is genus of the small ferns that float in the slow flowing or stationary fresh water. Just give me a second. Okay, so Azolla has cavities in its leaves that contain nitrogen fixing bacteria called Anabina azolla. Okay. In some parts of the world, farmers grow azolla in their rice fields. Rice fields are flooded with water so that the rice plants grow half submerged. Figure 3.1 shows rice and azolla growing together in the flooded fields. Figure 3.2 shows a section through the azolla leaf. Okay, it is a nitrogen fixing bacteria. That's what they are telling us. Okay, Azolla is a fern and rice is a flowering plant. Ferns and flowering plants are two groups in the plant kingdom. Use the information in figure 3.1 and 3.2 state the structural features used to classify Azolla as the plant kingdom. So in figure 3.2, what you can see, which tells you that it is that Azolla belongs to what? Belongs to plant kingdom. So in the picture, I can spot chloroplasts. Okay. What else I can see? That it is a multicellular organism, right? Because it is made up of multiple cells. Then what I can see that it does also have a cell wall. So even if you can't spot it in the picture, you should know that what differs a plant kingdom, right? They have a cell wall and they have the chloroplasts. But you can clearly see those two things in the picture as well. Okay. Now the next question, complete the sentences below. Rice plants reproduce sexually and after pollination they produce dash that are then dispersed. So what do they produce after pollination? Obviously they produce seeds. That's the first thing, right? Or you can say fruits, but the seeds are better. Seeds is the better answer because after pollination, seeds are formed, which can be dispersed as well. Azolla reproduces sexually by producing. Obviously, you know that sexual reproduction is by the gametes. It can also be done by the spores. However, I would say that sexually reproduction is more through gametes. So that's the more common answer. Okay, now let's move on to the next part. Farmers grow azolla in rice fields to increase the rice yield. Suggest why the rice yield increases. So you know that azolla is a nitrogen fixing bacteria. So when the nitrogen fixing bacteria is being grown with the rice, what will happen? There will be the production of nitrates. And when the nitrates will be produced, it will enter the water and the soil, and the rice will absorb the nutrients, the nitrates. Then what nitrates help with? It helps us with making amino acids. And when the amino acids will be produced, there will be more proteins and hence the growth or the yield of the crop will increase. So what will happen? Production of nitrates by the nitrating producing bacteria. After the production of nitrates, what will happen? Rice absorbs the nitrates. They will produce amino acids. And then those amino acids will be used to make proteins. And when the proteins will be made, the crop yield would increase. Okay, next part. The Azolla can grow very quickly. It can remove as much as 1.5 kg per meter square per year of carbon from the atmosphere. Describe how Azolla removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So I don't think so. It's a very difficult answer. So basically, what happens? The Azolla is a plant, belongs to a plant kingdom. So obviously, it needs to photosynthesize, right? So carbon dioxide from the atmosphere will diffuse through its stomata, and carbon dioxide is required for photosynthesis, right? So what will Azolla do? It absorb carbon dioxide from atmosphere. Okay, it will absorb it from the atmosphere through stomata. For what purpose? For photosynthesis. Okay, then what it will produce? The glucose is formed from carbon dioxide and water, which is stored as starch. So this is how Azolla removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. And I think if you know your theory well, if you know your concept well, these questions are very basic to understand and answer as well. Explain, next part, explain why removing carbon from the atmosphere may help the global environment. Because when the carbon is removed from the atmosphere, the carbon dioxide concentration in the environment decreases. So we know that carbon dioxide decreases, and it is a greenhouse gas. So there will be less global warming and climate change. So as less heat energy will be trapped, because you know that carbon dioxide has the capacity to trap heat. Okay, last part suggests different species of Azolla are found naturally in many countries. Azolla has been introduced by the humans to some countries where it is not alive. When Azolla is introduced to a country, it can have an impact on the natural freshwater ecosystem. So just how Azolla can have an impact on the freshwater ecosystem. So basically what will happen, there will be a competition of other organisms with the Azolla for the nutrients and for the resources, right? So or the other thing that could be possible is eutrophication, right? Because there will be increased nitrates, and ammonia causes increased plant production. Plant production will increase, so it can lead to eutrophication as well. So let's write it quickly. The first thing is the competition for resources. And survival with Azolla. Okay. Next thing you can mention about eutrophication. Increased growth of plants. And why is there increased growth of plants? Because of due to increased nitrates. Okay, so let's continue with question number 4. It says that lipases are the enzymes produced by animals, plants, and microorganisms. Lipases from different species can have different chemical structures. All enzymes are biological catalysts. So explain what is meant by the term catalyst. So you know that catalysts are the chemicals that speed up the chemical reaction, right? Chemicals that speed up the chemical reaction, right? And remain unchanged at the end, right? These are the two important characteristics of a catalyst, okay? Now let's move on to the next part. Lipase is a digestive enzyme in humans. Name an organ that secretes lipase into the duodenum. So they are talking about pancreatic lipase, hence the organ would be pancreas. Okay. Next part, name the substrate and the products of the lipase. So you know that lipase acts on the lipids, right? Lipids or fats. Okay, and the products they make is fatty acids and glycerol. Okay. Now let's move on to the next part. It says that some scientists collected species of bacteria from different sources A, B, and C. The scientists investigated how temperature affected the activity of the lipase produced by the bacteria collected from 3 different sources. They wanted to find a source of lipase that could be used in biological washing powders. Okay, so they observed the effect of temperature on the 3 different sources, and in order to find a source of lipase which could work on the washing powders. So in part 1 asks you to use figure 4.1 and discuss the results from this investigation. So basically you don't need to do anything. You just need to discuss the graph which you can see in the picture, right? So let me first tell you that what the graph shows. So basically the graph is showing that lipases from A, B and C, like there are three sources, right? Lipases from A, B and C. They all work in a range of a temperature which is 40 to 85, right? When you are asked to discuss the graph or describe the graph, there is nothing difficult in that. Whatever you see in the picture, you just need to describe it without any explanation. Okay, no need of explanation. That is a wastage of time. Okay, so first of all, you can see that the lipases from A, B, and C work in a range of a temperature, right? You can also see that every source has an optimum temperature. For example, A works best at 40, right? And B works best at, B is light gray, right? So B works best at 60 degrees, right? And C works best at 75 degrees, right? So this is what we're gonna write in our answer as well. That lipases from A, B, and C work in a range of temperature which is 40 to 85 degrees Celsius. Okay, so this is the first point. The second point is that A works best at 40 degrees, or you can say the optimum temperature of A is similarly, B works best at what degrees? It was 60. Okay. Lastly, and C works best at 75. Okay, now let's move on to the next part. The lipase molecules produced by different species of bacteria have different chemical structures. Explain what determines the different chemical structures of the lipase molecule. So you know that lipase is a protein, right? So proteins are made up of amino acids. That's what we're going to write. And the secondly, they're asking to explain why having different chemical structures can affect their activity at different temperature. So basically, what they're asking that how the chemical structure affect the uh, affect the activity of the enzymes in different temperatures. So first of all, what we are going to write is that the lipases are the proteins coded by DNA, right? Secondly, you should write that they are made up of specific sequence of amino acids, right? Okay. What else you can mention is that these enzymes due to this specific sequence of amino acids, hence have specific active sites which denature. At higher temperatures, right? Okay, so now let's move on to the next question, which is question number 5. They're showing a sample of human blood is put into a small tube. The tube is placed in the centrifuge, which spins around very fast to separate the components of the blood. The denser the components of the blood collect at the bottom of the tube. Figure 5.1 shows the composition of the blood sample. So you can see that this blood sample is being centrifuged and has been divided into 3 parts: pale, yellow, white, and red. So you know that the pale part is the plasma, right? And the plasma is made up of 7% proteins, 2% solutes, and 91% water, right? Okay. Now they have given the examples of proteins, which are antibodies and insulin, and they are asking you to write the examples of the solutes. So you know that glucose is one of the solutes. Urea, which is the waste product, runs in the plasma, and other could be amino acids. There could be also be fats. There could also be other soluble substances. Okay. Now they're asking you in first part, they asked you to complete the figure 5.1. Now they're asking you to suggest why red blood cells are more dense than white blood cells. So you know that red blood cells have two important things, which is the pigment. Which pigment? The hemoglobin. And a very important element, which is iron. Iron and the hemoglobin concentration makes the red blood cells denser as compared to. Okay, now they're asking the ABO blood groups in human are determined by the 3 alleles IA, IB, and IO. There are 4 blood groups, phenotypes, but 6 different genotypes for the ABO blood group. complete table 5.1 to match the groups to their possible genotypes. So if a person has a blood group phenotype A, it means that he has a blood group of IA. I'm sorry, just a second. I'm writing it here because the space at there is a little congested. Okay, so IA, IA, or it can be along with IA and IO, right? Then for IB, that goes the same IB plus IBO. Thirdly, they have asked about IAB. So you know that could only be possible if they have both IA and IB alleles. And O is only possible in case of IO and IO. So this was the possible genotypes for the different blood groups. Now they're asking a pregnant woman has blood group O. The fetus in the woman's uterus developed from one of her fertilized eggs and his blood group B. State the genotype of the fetus. Since the women had the blood group O and the fetus is having a blood group B, so what does it mean? That the fetus must have IB and IO. Okay. Now next part is saying the women and the fetus have different blood groups. So they have different antigens on their red blood cell membrane. The women has the antibodies to the antigen on the red blood cells of the fetus. Explain why the women's antibodies are not usually able to contact with the antigen of the fetus. So basically the mother had the antibodies against the antigens which is present on the red fetus on the fetus's red blood cells. However, the antibodies are not interacting with the antigen. The reason is that the placenta separates the circulation. Remember, of mother and fetus. Okay. Another important point is that these antibodies, I'm writing it in short, antibodies are bigger and cannot pass through the capillaries. Hence, they do not enter the circulation of fetus. Now, quickly move on to the next question. Cholera is a disease caused by the pathogen Vibrio cholera. Outbreaks of cholera often occur after natural disasters such as earthquakes. And why does it happen? Because earthquakes cause the damage to your sewage system, which contaminates the drinking water, right? So Vibrio cholera is a microorganism. Name the microorganism. So it's the bacteria which causes the cholera. Suggest and explain reasons why outbreaks are more likely to occur after the natural disaster. So first of all, after the earthquakes, what happens? First of all, you should know that cholera toxin transmitted by drinking water which is contaminated. Secondly, there is poor sanitation. And why is there a poor sanitation? Because of the disruption of the sewage system. Okay, I hope this is clear. Now let's move on to the next part. They're saying an infection with Vibrio cholera can cause severe diarrhea. This can be treated by giving the patient a solution to drink, which is usually known as ORS, right? Okay, so basically they're asking, explain how the infection causes diarrhea. So they are asking that what is the mechanism of action of the cholera toxin. So basically what happens that cholera toxin increases chloride ion release to where it releases it in the small intestine. Okay. Therefore, water follows through osmosis. Down water potential gradient. And it makes your feces watery. Okay, now let's move on to the next part. Using figure 6.1 suggests why giving the patient the solution to drink is an effective treatment of diarrhea. So basically, whenever you give your patient ORS, you know that we are giving it for rehydration. Rehydration and to restore chloride ions which have been lost, chloride ions and other electrolytes. Okay, now the last question. The mammalian nervous system is essential for coordination and control. It is an organ system that contains the eyes. Explain the difference between the organs, tissues, cells, and cells using the eye as an example. So, in this question, it is a very basic thing that you need to write the definition of cell, tissue, and organ. One could never easier question than this, right? However, you have to be careful that you have to use I as an example. So the better way is to do is that you write cell and in the bracket you just mention the names of the cell like rods and cones. So your example is covered, okay? Is a basic unit of life, right? Secondly, when we talk about tissues, so you mentioned that what tissues are present in the eye, retina, cornea, conjunctiva. You can mention any of the. ठीक है? Okay, so after tissues is basically are a group of cells which perform similar function together, right? And then when we talk about organ, like eye, is a group of tissues which perform Okay, now the last part of the last question. Synapses are found in the mammalian nervous system. Explain how the structure of the synapse ensures that electrical impulse is traveling in one direction, right? So if this is the direction of the travel, it means this is a presynaptic neuron and this is a postganglionic neuron, right? Postsynaptic neuron. Okay, this is a presynaptic neuron and this one is a postsynaptic neuron. Okay, this one is the pre and this one is the postsynaptic neuron. So what happens is that this presynaptic neuron, when it is hit by an impulse, what happens? These vesicles release the neurotransmitters. Okay, as soon as these impulses are transmitted to the vesicles, these vesicles release their neurotransmitters in the synaptic junction. And when they diffuse through the synapse, they have the receptors on the neurotransmitters receptors are present on the post synaptic neuron. So those neurotransmitters will bind there and produce out an effective response. So let's quickly write the important points. So what happens? Impulse arrives at presynaptic neuron. Then what happens? Vesicles release the neurotransmitters and then these neurotransmitters diffuse through the synapse and after diffusing through the synapse, these neurotransmitters bind their receptors on postganglionic postsynaptic neuron. Okay, Okay, this marks the end of your paper. If you have any query, you can drop down in the comment box. I wish you good luck. I shall see you in the next session. Allah Hafiz.